Pain fighter. Tahitian Noni juice. Explore noni's unique relationship to arthritis, inflammation and the COX-2 enzyme. By Neil Solomon, MD, PhD. When Dr. Richard Dick started giving his wheelchair-bound son a brown juice with a distinct smell, he was only doing what many ancient Polynesian village doctors and ancient healers called kahunas had done before him. He was trying to tap into the tropical noni fruit's historically known ability to help alleviate pain. For nearly all his life, Dr. Dick's son, who has a bone disease and suffers from a special form of arthritis, had known the companionship of pain. Without telling anyone what he was doing, Dr. Dick gave both himself and his son for 8 months a regular daily dosage of juice from the noni fruit known as Tahitian Noni juice. He was amazed when his son's pain dissipated until it was almost gone. It is believed that around 100 AD, immigrants from Southeast Asia arrived on the Polynesian islands. With them, they brought the essentials to survive, including noni seeds, so that the kahunas could continue to practice their art of natural healing called huna. These healers used all parts of the noni plant to treat conditions that varied from skin disease to indigestion. Its main ancient medicinal use was for the treatment of pain. Little did these kahunas know that centuries later their uses of the noni fruit to help alleviate pain would be proven valid by using test tubes and microscopes in a modern laboratory by highly qualified biochemists. In the last few years, Mirinda, Inc., makers of Tahitian Noni juice, has released information that reveals important findings as to the relationship between noni and the COX enzymes. COX enzymes are found naturally within the body and are very much connected to pain, especially inflammatory pain felt by those who suffer from arthritis. This book is designed to explore and explain the antagonistic relationship noni has to the COX-2 enzyme. However, before proceeding directly to COX-2, let us take a quick course in Basic Biochemistry 101. Enzymes. What are they and what do they do? In short, enzymes are proteins that speed up or slow down virtually every biological and chemical reaction there is in the human body. Some researchers, perhaps feeling a bit poetic, have called enzymes little fountains of life. A more technical description, however, is that enzymes are protein molecules in plant and animal life that are made up of long chains of amino acids. Every second of our lives, over 3,000 different enzymes are renewing and changing. Some of the more commonly discussed enzymes deal with the human body's digestive system. Many have heard of the enzymes found in saliva and stomach juice, which help in the breakdown of food into nutrients that the body can use. To be more specific, the enzyme called protease breaks proteins into smaller proteins. The amylase enzyme splits carbohydrates, starches and sugars. The lipase enzyme breaks down fats. However, there are many more enzymes at work in the body, other than those related to digestion. Enzyme imbalances within the body can lead to problems. A common example is when someone has a shortage of the enzyme lactase. The lactase enzyme is needed to break down lactose that is found in dairy products. If the body has a shortage of lactase, the result is that dairy products are not broken down correctly and the person may experience gas, diarrhea, cramping, and bloating. This is just one example of an enzyme imbalance. There are thousands more examples because there are thousands of different kinds of enzymes at work in the body, and each one of them has a specific function. For the remainder of this book, I would like to focus on just two specific enzymes, COX-1 and COX-2, and what happens when the body's level of these two enzymes is not in balance. Solving the COX enzyme puzzle. It is the British pharmacologist, Sir John R. Vane, who is given the credit for understanding how the original COX enzyme functioned. COX is an abbreviation for cyclooxygenase. Dr. Vane won the Nobel Prize in 1982 for his lifelong work with prostaglandins. In his research, which began in the early 1950s, he discovered that the COX enzyme was responsible for the conversion of arachidonic acid to prostaglandins. Prostaglandins have different roles in the body. Some stimulate muscles to contract or to relax, while others cause blood to clot. Dr. Vane found that the COX enzyme produced prostaglandins that caused painful inflammation of damaged tissues. He determined that by preventing the production of the COX enzyme, the body would be limited in its production of prostaglandins that caused inflammation. He also showed how aspirin stopped the body's production of the COX enzyme and thereby stopped the production of prostaglandins that caused pain and inflammation. It wasn't until several decades later that scientists learned there were actually two different COX enzymes. Since Dr. Vane's discovery, more than 30 nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs (NSAIDs) have come on the market to help relieve pain associated with inflammation. The more common type of inflammatory pain is associated with the disease arthritis. In fact, NSAIDs have become the most widely prescribed class of drugs in the world. The more common of these two drugs are aspirin and ibuprofen. Along with the success of the NSAIDs drugs came the knowledge that there was a flip side to the drugs. Yes, they did help with inflammatory pain, but they also seemed to cause an entirely new illness, that of gastrointestinal problems such as ulcers. NSAIDs and arthritis. Common arthritis, called either osteoarthritis or degenerative joint disease (DJD), is found in the joints of the body. It is generally limited to those joints that have become inflamed and sore from continued wear and tear. The cartilage that cushions the joints degenerates, leaving the raw joints to rub against each other. On the other hand, rheumatoid arthritis, though similar in many symptoms, is different in cause. With rheumatoid arthritis, the body's immune system begins attacking the body tissues, especially around the joints. Many times there is a red, painful lump located around the rheumatoid joints. Other symptoms are fever, weight loss, stiffness and loss of energy. People who rely on medications such as aspirin and ibuprofen to control the pain associated with osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis soon find themselves suffering from a whole new gamut of pain. It is a well-known fact that these and other NSAIDs cause gastric ulcers, upper GI bleeding, and colitis. In fact, studies show that half of the people on NSAIDs for pain control end up contracting some sort of gastrointestinal problem. For years, however, people who have arthritis and related illnesses have put up with negative side effects of NSAIDs in order to gain some control of the pain in the other areas of their bodies. It was the presence of these negative side effects from NSAIDs that spurred researchers into trying to find out more about the COX enzyme. The discovery of COX-2. In 1991, while studying cancer at Brigham Young University in Utah, Associate Professor of Chemistry Dr. Daniel L. Simmons discovered something that he was not expecting to find: there was more than just one COX enzyme. Before Dr. Simmons' discovery, scientists believed that there was just one COX enzyme, COX-1, that was involved in a myriad of processes including pain, inflammation, fever, and protection of stomach lining. Dr. Simmons found that the COX-2 enzyme increased within cells as they become cancerous. The differences between COX-1 and COX-2. See Table 1 for comparison. Now that scientists have had time to investigate the two different COX enzymes, it turns out the two differ in terms of genetics, biochemistry, and function. COX-1 is simply called by many the good COX enzyme, while COX-2 has earned the unflattering name as the bad enzyme. COX-1 is easily identifiable and is important in regulating cell function. COX-2, on the other hand, is generally undetectable in most tissues, but increases in level only during acute inflammation. The two enzymes are even found on different chromosomes. The genes for the COX-2 enzyme are found on chromosome 1 while the genes for the COX-1 enzyme don't show up until chromosome 9. The COX-1 enzyme, or good enzyme, creates prostaglandins that protect the stomach lining and other parts of the body. The COX-2 enzyme creates prostaglandins that cause inflammation in the joints, muscles and other areas. The COX-2 enzyme, however, is not all bad. It actually serves a useful purpose in the body when it exists in only minute levels. COX-2 has the job of burning fat in the body that is called arachidonic acid. This fat is an omega-6 fatty acid and occurs naturally in all of our cell membranes or walls. The comparison has been made between COX-2 and a spark plug. The enzyme is the spark, the fat is the fuel, and the flame of inflammation is the end result. The problem is that sometimes this fire burns more than it should and causes inflammation that is out of control. This is the condition we see in those people who suffer from arthritis. Table 1. COX-1 versus COX-2 comparison. COX-1 good enzyme. In most tissues easily identifiable. Protects stomach lining, important in regulating normal cell function. Gene found on chromosome 1. COX-2 bad enzyme. Difficult to identify except greatly increased in cancer cells, inflammation, and Alzheimer's. Causes pain, swelling, inflammation, and inflammatory damage. Gene found on chromosome 9. The birth of SUPERASPIRINS. Working off of Professor Simmons' research, two large pharmaceutical companies, Merck and Monsanto, continued to investigate the two different COX enzymes during most of the 1990s. As reviewed in the section above, these companies found that COX-1 is essential for blood clotting and for protecting the stomach. COX-2 is the key player in inflammation, pain, and fever. NSAIDs steeply decrease the body's production of both enzymes, thereby decreasing inflammation while at the same time causing harm to the stomach and its lining. These drug companies thought that if they could find a drug that would stop COX-2 from being produced but not significantly stop COX-1, they would find at last the answer to treating inflammatory pain without significant gastrointestinal side effects. On November 10, 1998, these same two drug companies announced that they had tested final versions of what they called superaspirins, or in other words, drugs that selectively inhibited the body's production of COX-2. In December of 1998, the FDA gave its approval for these superaspirin drugs that are specifically targeted to arthritis sufferers. Since that time, however, these same drugs that were supposed to avoid the negative effects of NSAIDs have been reported causing side effects such as rashes, facial swelling, unusual bleeding, and stomach pain. Recent studies reported from the Cleveland Clinic by Dr. Eric Poppel and others confirm that long-term use of prescription arthritis medication Vioxx and Celebrex may increase the risk of heart attacks and strokes. These possible negative side effects from drugs that were specifically made to avoid negative side effects was disappointing to many arthritis sufferers who had eagerly awaited the market release of the new superaspirins. The prescription drugs that selectively inhibited the COX-2 enzyme had their own list of negative side effects. Perhaps it was because of this that some began hunting instead for a natural COX-2 inhibitor. Mirinda Inc.'s Tahitian Noni juice study. During the mid-1990s, as the pharmaceutical companies were in a race trying to patent a drug that would inhibit the bad COX-2 enzyme without destroying the good COX-1 enzyme, a company by the name of Mirinda, Inc. was being created. Its founders strongly believed in the health-promoting abilities of a tropical fruit called noni, or scientifically known as Mirinda citrifolia. Mirinda Inc. was officially started in 1994. Within just a short while, it made its first $1 million in sales. By 1998, when the drug companies released their new arthritis medication, Mirinda was selling noni juice globally to hundreds of thousands of people. The business was thriving based on the uniqueness and effectiveness of its product, Tahitian Noni juice. A few years later, this same company, Mirinda Inc., decided to use some of its research and development dollars to fund a scientific study on Tahitian Noni juice and COX-1 and 2 enzymes. This first study was conducted at state-of-the-art Mirinda Research Laboratory located in Provo, Utah. Mirinda Inc., exclusive makers of Tahitian Noni juice, wanted to specifically investigate the effects that noni had on COX-1 and COX-2 since there had been so many successful reports from arthritis sufferers who used Tahitian Noni juice. Dr. Chen Shu, Jarek A. Jensen, and others at the Mirinda Research Laboratory found that indeed Tahitian Noni juice was a selective inhibitor of COX-2. In addition, it did very little, if any damage to the COX-1 enzyme. In other words, this natural juice from French Polynesia was, in a sense, a natural superaspirin without side effects. The in which Mirinda studied COX-2 was to weigh the inhibition ratio of the COX-1 enzyme to compare the COX-2 enzyme. When scientists compared Tahitian Noni juice COX inhibition ratio to the COX inhibition ratio of prescription arthritis medications, they found that Tahitian Noni juice compared very favorably to the prescription medications. Yet, Tahitian Noni juice exhibited none of the negative side effects that the prescription medications are known to cause. Next, researchers compared the COX inhibition ratio to the COX inhibition ratio of over-the-counter NSAIDs. In this category, Tahitian Noni far outperformed the over-the-counter medications. And again, the Noni did not exhibit any of the negative side effects associated with NSAIDs. It was concluded that the non-observable adverse effect level of Tahitian Noni juice is much better than the observable side effects of leading prescription and non-prescription drugs for arthritis. This study was then redone, verified and proven at 2 more independent, international laboratories in France and Taiwan. The misery and protection factor. To some, the COX inhibition ratio reviewed in the previous section is somewhat confusing. To help visually explain the relationship between Noni, NSAIDs, and prescription arthritis medications, I created the following visual graphic explanations that focus on the COX enzymes and their relation to the body's protection factor PF versus the body's misery factor MF. COX diagram. Diagram 1. Arachidonic acid. PF. Good COX-1 enzyme. Good housekeeping enzyme. Good prostaglandins -1. Protect GI tract. Platelets. MF. Bad COX-2 enzymes. Bad prostaglandins-2. Primary sites. Inflammation. Pain, swelling. Diagram 1 visually breaks down the 2 different enzymes into a simple form. First, the arachidonic acid within the body combines with the COX-1 enzyme to create good prostaglandins that protect the stomach and blood platelets. The presence of these good prostaglandins gives the body a protective factor PF that allows continued health in the GI tract. The same arachidonic acid combines with the COX-2 enzyme to create bad prostaglandins that cause inflammation, pain and swelling. The presence of these bad prostaglandins gives the body a misery factor MF that is based upon the presence of pain and inflammation. Diagram 2 then shows the ratio of the protective factor to the misery factor based upon what an individual is consuming. Dr. Solomon's concept Tahitian Noni juice COX connection. Diagram 2. PF. Normal threshold 10. Arthritis threshold 9, 5. TNJ threshold 8, 5. Non-TNJ COX threshold 7. The Sansades threshold 4. MF. Normal threshold 2. Arthritis threshold 8. TNJ threshold 2, 5. Non-TNJ COX threshold 3. The Sansades threshold 3, 5. Diagram 2 shows how the body's protective factor and misery factor vary depending upon what a person uses to control the pain and inflammation associated with arthritis. The threshold indicates at what point there is a problem. With the protective factor, the lower the pair the closer it comes to the threshold. This means the closer a person is to having GI tract problems due to low levels of COX-1. With the misery factor, the higher the MF, the closer a person is to the threshold of painful arthritis. The first PF per megafarad ratio is of a normal person. In other words, this person does not suffer from arthritis. This person's protective factor is high because there is plenty of COX-1 and his or her misery factor is low because there is very little COX-2. The next PF per megafarad ratio is of a person who suffers from arthritis. This person has a high protective factor, but his or her misery factor is out of control. There is much too high a level of COX-2 within the body, and the person experiences pain. The next PF per megafarad ratio is of a person who has arthritis but who also consumes Tahitian Noni juice. The protective factor is not quite as high, because the COX-1 is slightly affected but not enough to approach the threshold. The misery factor is very low and does not approach the threshold because Tahitian Noni juice inhibited the COX-2 level. The fourth PF per megafarad ratio is of an arthritic person who takes a COX-2 inhibiting drug, other than Tahitian NONIR juice. As you can see, the PF approaches the threshold, and the MF is a little higher. In addition, some of the COX-2 inhibiting drugs caused other negative side effects that are not related to the GI tract such as rashes, facial swelling and unusual bleeding. The next PF per megafarad ration is of a person who takes NSAIDs to control his or her arthritis. In this instance the threshold has been crossed by the protective factor, meaning that the levels of COX-1 have been inhibited to the point where there is little protection for the stomach and its lining. In addition, the misery factor continues to approach its threshold even more. In essence, Tahitian Noni juice smart targets the misery factor of COX-2, while doing very little collateral damage to the protective factor of COX-1. Tahitian Noni juice is a smart juice. Other reasons arthritis sufferers use Tahitian Noni juice. Besides noni's ability to selectively inhibit COX-2, there are several other reasons by which noni may alleviate some of the painful symptoms of arthritis. First, the number one complaint from those who suffer from arthritis is pain. Noni has been used for thousands of years in French Polynesia to treat all sorts of causes of pain. In the last few years, scientists have studied this use of noni with very interesting results. A laboratory in France conducted a study that showed mice, given a liquid form of Morinda citrifolia, had increased reaction time to a hot plate. The researchers concluded that the noni helped the mice better deal with the pain from the hot plate. Explanations for noni's analgesic qualities may stem from several of its compounds. Noni has been shown to contain scopoletin, which has anti-inflammatory and antihistamine effects, both of which are needed for smooth joint movement. Another component is zeronine, the cell-building substance discovered by Dr. Ralph Heinecker. Zeronine is believed to help prevent and rebuild damaged joint tissue as well as promote a healthier immune system. Additional research reveals that noni contains numerous essential nutrients including proteins, amino acids, vitamins and minerals, and a host of other compounds, which synergistically may contribute to noni's ability to fight pain. The following are excerpts from personal letters sent to me personally as well as to a fellow doctor. They are stories about the relief men and women have received from their aches and pains associated with arthritis thanks to Tahitian Noni juice. Phil Olson. Ever since 1988, when I suffered knee misfortune due to an accident, I have endured pain. As a result, going up and down stairs had become pure torture. At church I had to go up and down the balcony steps to play the pipe organ and direct the church choir. The journey up and down those steps had become an endurance contest. Our shower at home is in the basement. Going up and down those steps had become a challenging experience as well. People on the street would invariably ask, "Why are you limping, Phil?" So I'd tell them. After trying several treatments and x-rays, I was informed that this would be something I would just simply have to live with and endure. So I did, and then on November 11, 1996, being only 73 years young, I took my first swig of Tahitian Noni juice. After about 5 days I found that getting out of bed was not such a painful experience. My walking started to improve and my limp gradually crept back into the woodwork, and surprise of surprises, going up and down steps once again became possible without the former pain. Needless to say, I was ecstatic. Both my wife and I treat ourselves to noni juice every day first thing in the morning, and we benefit greatly. We try to tell as many people as possible about this wonderful juice. Those who believe us and try it benefit also. Those who are skeptical or are of the doubting Thomas type go on suffering with their aches and pains. The TURLEYS. Both my wife and I have been on a search for several years for help with health problems that have plagued us. I have suffered with a compressed disc in my lower back. I was scheduled for surgery but chose to try every other avenue before having the surgery. The treatments I tried would be too long to list. Some helped a bit and most did not. My wife suffers from a muscle problem in her legs, a ruptured disc in her back, and arthritis in her knees. When we heard about Tahitian NONP juice, we decided to give it a 3-month try. I began to notice a difference in about a month. After 6 weeks I was able to do things I had not done for years. I can now work in the garden, hike, hunt and chop firewood without hardly any pain. My wife began to notice improvement after about 6 weeks. She now takes long walks for exercise and no longer suffers from severe leg and back pain. When this happened to us, we decided that other people had to hear about this wonderful juice. Edna Turner. My introduction to Tahitian Noni juice was by way of a conversation when I went to a birthday party limping because of pain in my knee. A couple of weeks after the party I decided why not try this juice. I had been taking Tahitian Noni juice for about 2 months for my knee, so I thought when I noticed that I wasn't feeling pain in my wrist, back, and knee. However, my neck was still giving me problems. All these pains come from my friend Arthritis. Anyone who knows me knows I ride a motorcycle. All of the above-mentioned body parts must be pain-free to ride safely and enjoy it. I was diagnosed with a degenerative disc, which can be quite painful and is usually treated with medication. When I was experiencing neck pain, a result of my disc problem, and knowing that I had to wear a helmet when riding, I decided to seek medical attention. When I met with one of my doctors, a neurosurgeon, he asked what medication was I taking for my neck pain. I told him I was not taking any medication, that I was just drinking noni juice. He asked in that strange way, "Where did you get that from?" I thought he was going to make a joke about the noni juice. Instead, he asked which juice, what did it look like, what color was it, and so on. I told him it was the one with the picture of the man blowing a shell horn and that it was Tahitian Noni juice. The doctor told me to continue taking it, and that he was taking it too. And if more people drank the juice, they wouldn't see people like him. Well, that was all I really needed to hear to get me totally involved with Tahitian Noni juice. Therefore, I continued to drink the juice, and I signed up as a member. After more time on noni, I have no more neck pain. Shoulders, I can now turn my head without turning my neck at the same time. All pain has stopped, and I mean stopped. COX-2's connection to cancer and Alzheimer's disease. As I mentioned earlier, the differences between the COX-1 and COX-2 enzymes were initially discovered by a professor who was studying cancer. His discovery was quickly related to arthritis, but the fact remains that scientists believe the COX-2 enzyme plays an important role in other diseases besides arthritis. Two widely studied diseases associated with COX-2 besides arthritis are cancer and Alzheimer's. When people suffer from cancer, specific parts of their body lose normal cellular controls. This results in the unregulated growth of malignant cells into a cancerous tumor. Cancer cells have a lack of differentiation and invade local tissue and travel elsewhere, metastasize. Scientists have found the COX-2 enzyme present in an ever-increasing list of malignant tumors. For example, COX-2 frequently shows up in a common form of stomach cancer. In addition, cancerous tumors in the colon, pancreas, breast, lung, liver and prostate all have increased amounts of COX-2 present. In July 2001 issue of Clinical Cancer Research, Finnish scientists reported that they examined tumors from 43 patients with a type of stomach cancer that somewhat resembles colon cancer. Of these 43 patients, 25 showed evidence of the COX-2 enzyme. Some researchers believe that a new and perhaps critical avenue to study may be how to combat cancer using COX inhibition. While this field of study is relatively new, it potentially shows promising implications for supplements such as Tahitian Noni juice that selectively inhibit the body's production of COX-2. In addition, while Alzheimer's disease remains still quite mysterious, there are some things that are known about this potentially devastating condition. In simple terms, in Alzheimer's, brain cells may be inflamed and rendered eventually useless. The more brain cells that a person loses, the more advanced is the memory loss. COX-2 is suspected to be one culprit behind the brain cells inflammation. At the Johns Hopkins Hospital and at other academic institutions there is active research going on as to why the brain cells start to become inflamed. Regardless of why, if the levels of COX-2 can be controlled and even diminished by using a selective COX-2 inhibitor, there is the possibility of an eventual role in prevention or even that the Alzheimer's may be slowed down. For now, the theories on how COX-2 inhibitors work on cancer and Alzheimer's are still in the early, but promising stages. On the other hand, that COX-2 inhibitors have a clinically proven ability to help combat the pain of arthritis is scientifically proven. The exciting news to the millions of people who suffer from arthritis is that by using Tahitian Noni juice they may be able to lower their levels of COX-2 without suffering the negative side effects often caused by prescription and over-the-counter medications. Conclusion. For years people have suffered from arthritic pain. In fact, fossil remains indicate that Roman Emperor Constantine IX, who lived from 980 to 1055, suffered from rheumatoid arthritis. Many who had severe types of arthritis died young. Gratefully, things have changed. What a blessing it is to live in a day and age where we have the resources and knowledge to live a long and fulfilling life even when afflicted with disease. With the scientific ability we have, we now know there are even natural options to help combat arthritis for those who used to feel joint pain on a daily basis. I believe that with correct diet, exercise, and by drinking Tahitian Noni juice, many of our aching joints can become a thing of the past. For years the COX enzyme was a puzzle to scientists. They knew that the COX enzyme caused painful inflammation, especially in arthritis sufferers, but they didn't understand why treating that symptomatic pain caused side effects in the stomach such as ulcers. In the 1990s that puzzle was finally solved when researchers at last discovered there are really two COX enzymes, COX1 the good enzyme and COX2 the bad enzyme. By creating a drug to limit the body's production of the COX2 enzyme without affecting the production of COX1, scientists felt that, in theory, the drug would be the perfect solution to treating painful inflammation. However, many of the chemically created prescription drugs made to selectively limit the COX2 enzyme continued to negatively affect the body in other ways. The world was in need of a naturally created COX2 inhibitor. In steps Tahitian Noni juice. Within the last few years, Mirinda Inc. has released incredible third-party analysis of Tahitian Noni juice showing that it is just as effective as some prescription drugs in limiting the body's production of COX2. There is one difference, however. Tahitian Noni juice is natural and doesn't cause the other negative side effects that prescription drugs often do. Dr. Neil Solomon takes a detailed look into the COX enzymes and how Tahitian Noni juice is playing an important role in this story. Dr. Solomon carefully and skillfully explains exactly how Tahitian Noni juice is becoming known more and more as today's natural pain fighter.